This is the Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the Blood Red Podcast with me, Sean Bradbury. Yesterday was a sensational day of sport in which Federer and Djokovic took a Wimbledon Classic all the way to a thrilling 5-set conclusion. We also saw England and New Zealand play out a scarcely believable and all-time great game of one-day cricket in the World Cup final, but the only one we're interested in here trumps them all. The mighty Reds going up to Valley Parade and putting 3 past Bradford as the pre-season juggernaut rolls on. To look back on that and assess a bit of other Liverpool business, I have with me Ian Doyle and Paul Gorst. Gents, are we okay?
Good day to you, sir. I was going to give away the time of the day and I couldn't remember which. Is we morning or afternoon? It's just
who knows?
All just merges into one in these shifts, doesn't it?
It does.
I'm not too bad to answer your question, Sean. How are you?
Very well, very well. Doyle, we'll start with you on this then. Yeah. And I just want a general assessment really of pre-season so far. I know it's only 2 games, but you were at Bradford yesterday, Tranmere before that. Another win for the Reds. What I'm getting at though is how significant do you think it is that Liverpool stay in this winning habit? I know it's only pre-season, but we all saw what happened in the last campaign, the relentless pace that the Reds had to go just to stay neck and neck with City. And results can vary in pre-season, of course, and have no bearing on the actual league when it gets going. But do you think that's a little bit different in this case?
The reality is they're playing, Tranmere and Bradford, so you'd expect them to win anyway, no matter what team that they put out. I mean, the game against Bradford, it was a lot harder than the Tranmere game for a number of reasons. And I know that if you look at the actual league standings of the pair, Tranmere are now in League 1, Bradford in League 2. They swapped over at the end of last season, but Tranmere have got a lot of new players. They've had a very quick rise out of the National League, and Bradford did look like a team who had been in League 1 for quite a while, or been knocking around those leagues for a while. They had a bit more about them. They were stronger. They had James Vaughan was playing up front for them. He used to play for Everton, who helpfully scored the first goal for Liverpool, although James Milner's claiming that one. In terms of actually winning the games, yeah, you'd expect Liverpool to win. Winning is a habit. You want to get into that as soon as you can during the summer. We always say that pre-season games don't matter for much, but I think if we're being brutally honest here, those days have long gone, such as the scrutiny that's been brought up on these games. In the old days, they play friendlies and nobody was particularly interested. But that's not the case anymore. You've got to feed the monster, as it were. The club website put the games out live. Everybody's interested. They want to see how the youngsters are doing and which players are coming through. So from that point of view, you don't want to start losing games because more of a deal is made of it. They'll have a bit more of a test when they go over to America. Is it Borussia Dortmund, Sporting Lisbon and Sevilla? So It's interesting that it's such a massive step up, isn't it, from like League 2/League 1 team to straight up to team that finished second in the Bundesliga and got to the knockout stages of the Champions League. I think Jurgen Klopp would be reasonably happy with what he's seen so far, not least because there's been so many players missing. And it has given them a chance to the likes of the fringe players who've come back on loan from being on loan last season, such as Ryan Kent and Harry Wilson. Ryan Kent on Sunday, I thought he did reasonably well. I'm sure we'll touch on him in a bit. They've all got an opportunity here because they know that when they go to America, the likes of Virgil van Dijk, Jordan Henderson, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Andy Robertson, and Gini Wijnaldum. Yes, thank you. They're all going to be back, and Dejan Lovren got another game under his belt. So far so good for Liverpool. I thought they did play better against Tranmere though, and even James Milner said after the game on Sunday that perhaps it was because they've had quite a hard week of training. The legs kind of caught up with them a little bit. They didn't keep the ball quite as well as they should have done. But one thing we do have to say, by the way, is that there was more than 24,000 there who were out there for the game. At the Valley Parade, which is the biggest crowd they've had since they reopened the stadium in 1986. The reason for that isn't so much just because Liverpool were the European champions. That would be a big draw anyway. But it was a game that was played in aid of the Derby Rimmer Foundation, which has been set up by Stephen Derby, former Liverpool Academy graduate, played a few games in the 2008-9, former Bradford player. He was obviously diagnosed with motor neuron disease last year, had to retire from football at the age of 29. And before the game, he was there with Colin Rimmer, who's somebody who's he got to know through having suffered the disease, and he's done research into it, and he's got to know, and he's got more advanced motor neuron disease. They were on the pitch before the game, and they were speaking for about 4 or 5 minutes. Well, Stephen Darby was, and it was very emotional. I mean, I know that you were watching it here in the office, and I know that I sent a message about saying this is very emotional, and you were saying just actually watching it on television, you could tell it was. So it was an emotional day. But going back to the football side of it, I think Jurgen Klopp, it's so far so good, isn't it?
I think the other point on this, Gorty, as well, is there's things to be won, as soon as the season starts, really, isn't there? Does it feel to you that Liverpool have to hit the ground running with the Community Shield, the Super Cup, and things that are to come in a matter of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, as Doyle mentioned there, the step up in class is going to be vast now, isn't it, when Liverpool fly off to America for the 3 games against Dortmund, Sevilla and Sporting. So the squad, I mean, each member of the squad have got something to play for, haven't they? They've got their own personal goals and milestones that they'll set themselves, and players like Harry Wilson and Ryan Kent will be wanting to catch the eye, and obviously Dejan Lovren, who's got a battle on his hands to get back into the team. So, each of their little individual battles will seem to bring out more of a performance across the team, I think. So, I mean, Liverpool have been doing this for a few years now, haven't they, where they play a couple of generally northwest-based friendlies, and then they fly out to America. They're normally involved in the International Champions Cup, which, as Dodie knows, is one of my favourite pre-season tournaments.
Absolutely love it. You love that league table, don't you?
Yeah. It's 3 points for a win and then 7 points for every penalty you score or whatever it is. It's about to take a couple of steps up over the next week, and Liverpool will be aided and abetted by the players who are coming along, the England internationals and the Dutch internationals, and we'll start to see something resembling a bit more of a first team, a genuine first team Liverpool squad, and that's where the hard work really begins, I think. Up until when they come back, and then they've got, was it Geneva and then Murrayfield, or was it Murrayfield first?
It's Murrayfield first,
yeah, and then obviously the Community Shield to round it all off. So big few weeks ahead for a number of Liverpool players, to be honest, and I think all that will just breed. Getting the fitness levels up is the most important thing, but I think everyone will kind of want to put in a performance as well, just to remind Jurgen Klopp of what they can do. Players like Adam Lallana, we noticed him playing in a different role yesterday, and Klopp said himself something on it, didn't he? He likened it to Jorginho at Chelsea. So I think there are a lot of players already out there who've got plenty to play for.
What was interesting as well is after the game, Gary Bowie, the Bradford City boss, he was speaking to their local press, and he said that I was watching that first half and I was shattered just watching it, because Liverpool were just all over us. And he's funny. He said that he told his players, right, we'll take tomorrow off, i.e. the Monday off, and I'll give you a little bit of homework. You come back and then tell me what you learned from playing against Liverpool, playing against those players. So from that point of view, for Bradford, it's worthwhile. For Liverpool, I'm surprised by how fit they are, to be fair. And I know they always, I think long gone are the days where they'll go away for the summer and then come back and they're like 2 stone overweight, because the other thing is they never stop playing, do they? A lot of these players have played in.
True.
I know that these are the youngsters, but even the youngsters will have been played in various competitions, or their seasons will have ended later than you may have expected. And plus, they know for a fact that they've got this chance in these opening few weeks. So why on earth wouldn't you just throw everything into it? Make sure that you're at peak fitness so you can start impressing.
Well, let's assess a few performances then. Already mentioned briefly Doyley Ryan Kent. You wrote about him yesterday, his performance against Bradford. I felt with him, he's always been not overshadowed by Harry Wilson, but there's always seemed to kind of been a little bit more interest in Wilson, perhaps because of his international exploits, I don't know, or just...
I think it's also because he's in England.
Yeah. People are aware of the Championship, but given how well he's playing, is Kent himself developing into a genuine option for Klopp?
Well, that's why he's not gone back on loan straight away. I think, I know for a fact that Jurgen Klopp wants to take a look at him, and he knows that these couple of games, and it's tour in America, is a good chance to do that. The interesting thing for me is that whenever you see Ryan Kent play, you always think he's definitely got something. He came on, if you've got to remember, it was 2 years ago that he came on a sub against Bayern Munich, wasn't it, in the Audi Cup, and he did that great piece of skill, completely bamboozled Rafinha, set it up for Grujic, and then it was disallowed because I think Lallana was stood on the line or something stupid like that. Would have been a great goal otherwise. But that got him a move to Freiburg, which didn't work out. Then he moved to Bristol City, didn't work out there either. But last season up at Rangers, Steven Gerrard is a pretty good judge of player, and he was delighted with what they'd done, and they wanted to sign him, but they haven't got the money, I don't think, to sign him permanently. They still want to pursue this loan deal, but for Jurgen Klopp, he wants to take a look at him. And all he can do is what he did in the first half against Bradford. In all 3 goals, he played a part. The first one, he played the ball from the short corner. He played the ball across to James Milner to have the shot, which was headed in by Vaughan. The second one, it was him that broke into the area, got fouled, won the penalty. And the third one, it was Kent who, playing off the left wing as he did all game, if slightly more withdrawn, he wasn't like hugging the touchline. He was kind of brought in a little bit, more like an old inside left position, as my dad would call it. He played it across for Oxlade-Chamberlain to have the shot, which was then blocked, and Rhian Brewster knocked it in. So I know I did that story, and on social media I posed the question, could he save Liverpool a few bob in the transfer market? And it was the old...
some stuff.
Yeah, just a bit. Like the old we're European champions, we should be buying X, Y and Z and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's all well and good. But he did exactly what you expected him to do. And that's what you want from a player. he's playing for Liverpool, to come in and do that, because the pressure's going to be more on him and on Harry Wilson, to a lesser extent on Brewster because he's only just starting out. But Wilson and Kent both played an entire season at certainly reasonable level. Wilson ended up playing in a playoff final. Kent was played in the Europa League and was challenging for a long time for the Scottish Premier League title. And he decked Scott Brown. So it's like, what more could he do to actually catch the eye? So for him, the pressure's on. And while I didn't think he was particularly great, or certainly was quiet against Tranmere, I thought he was pretty impressive against Bradford in the 45 minutes he played.
Well, this is it, of course, isn't it? You know, Doherty mentioned Gerrard's desperate to keep him up at Rangers, and Kenny Dalglish this weekend was writing about him and how significant it could be if Kent does go there for another season and, you know, allow them to challenge Celtic. Two, again, as Doherty said, two good judges of football is there. What do these words from two Liverpool legends speak? They speak volumes about Kent, do they, and his talent? Yeah,
well, Gerrard would love him there, wouldn't he? Again, he's made no bones of that, and neither's Gary McAllister, who's his assistant there. I think they've said from the off, if there's any way we can get him on loan again, then that'll be the option that they prefer. As Doherty says, I think Doherty wrote the story actually earlier this year that they wanted around 12 million for him, which possibly prices him out of Rangers' budget.
I think they may have done it in the way that meant that he was priced out, or I think the way, well, you've written many a time over the last few weeks about Michael Edwards, the selling genius, and I think that's an example of that. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so maybe that prices him out of Rangers' budget, but if no offers are forthcoming, then I think they'll head the queue for another loan deal. In a way that Harry Wilson's kind of got a few weeks to show what he can do before Liverpool make a decision on him. Maybe it's Ryan Kent's in the same boat. Similar types of players, aren't they? Featured on opposite wings. And maybe Wilson's got the edge at this point, playing in the Championship at such a high level, going all the way to the playoff final, scoring 18 goals in all competitions. Rangers aren't what they were they 20 years ago, but they're still up there challenging Celtic. So I think it's definitely a big few weeks for Harry Wilson, which we already know, but I think it's probably the same for Ryan Kent.
I think there's an interesting parallel to be drawn with another Ryan that some Liverpool fans think they should be interested in. It's Ryan Fraser at Bournemouth, because he'd obviously made his way there. Who did he join Bournemouth from? I can't remember off the top of my head. He did play for a Scottish club, didn't he? I can't remember which one it was, but he's gone there. He's done well, he's had his chance. The kind of similar type players. You'd say Fraser's a bit faster, but then you'd argue that Kent's probably got a little bit more in his locker in terms of skills. Yeah. And if Liverpool were being linked with Ryan Fraser, I think a lot of fans would say that's a good backup option. That's somebody we should be going for. And because he's had the chance to prove himself in the Premier League over a number of years, because it's been nearly 3 years since he came on against Liverpool in that 4-3 game. Down at the Vitality Stadium.
Dean Court, as it used to be.
Yeah, the Vitality Stadium as it's now. I mean, there is scope. I don't know. Don't know whether Wilson is ahead of Kent. I'm not entirely convinced, simply on the basis of what they've shown so far and the feedback that, as we said, Steven Gerrard would have been given to Jurgen Klopp about how good he is.
Well, we shall see that, as you both said. Next few weeks will be very significant for the pair of them. Let's go from young talents to an older head, should we say, who does not need to prove himself. Of course, we'll start with you on this. James Milner, 1/2 goals yesterday, certainly, very much involved in the game. I felt with him last season, with everyone at the World Cup and him being retired from international football, having that break, having that time to just prepare. He started the season so well, series of lung-busting efforts in midfield, where he was just bossing games for me at the start of last season. He's another year older, but are you expecting the same again from Milner?
Oh yeah, undoubtedly. He keeps himself in probably the best nick out of the lot, doesn't he? Famously teetotal, he's on the Ribena diet, always topping the lactate test. So I see no reason why he won't be exactly the same. Evergreen James Milner. I read something, was it yesterday or today, that someone's tipping him to kind of rival Ryan Giggs' retirement age of 40, and you're looking at him, and he's got a 10-pack, hasn't he?
Every chance.
He's an absolute machine, and he's showing no signs of slowing down at the age of 33, as you know. So he's definitely got another couple of years in his locker at least. So I think Liverpool would be wise to maybe give him a 1-year extension at some point over the next 6 months.
Absolutely. Doherty, staying on Milner, how significant an example do you think he sets to the young lads? Kind of, like Gusty said, he's such a great trainer. He lives clean, and he basically does everything and shows everything of what is required to make it at this level. Is he kind of key in impressing that upon the youngsters?
Well, there are very few players in the Liverpool squad who are over the age of 30. Well, we're not going to be ageist. Once you get over the age of 30, that you have got a significant, and you're at a top level club, you surely do have a significant amount of experience, which he has got. I mean, he's one of those players, isn't he, that he's never... It's only now, it seems, in the last, say, 18 months that he's finally getting the credit he deserves for what he's done, not just at Liverpool, but in his career. I mean, I remember when he came on, when Liverpool played Man City, 2014, the Coutinho 3-2 game. Liverpool were 2-0 up at half-time. They brought on Milner, and he absolutely just ran the show for 25 minutes, and suddenly it was 2-2, and it was all on him, just the way he was playing the game. And you're right, he does look after himself very well. I think, obviously, there will come a point where no matter how much he looks after himself, just the body just says, come on, we've had enough. It's more to do with just sprinting over short spaces and stuff like that.
He's had a long career as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he will catch up with him eventually, but there's no signs of it yet. And he does set a good example. And what's more, he's actually really good at football. You can see the way he passes the ball about. Certainly against Tranmere, it was easy for him. He was just running the show. He spoke after the game on Sunday, and he did say that, look, it was a bit more difficult. The pitch was a bit drier with the risk of turning into Jurgen Klopp there. But these things do happen, and he perhaps didn't show as much care. But with the ball, but he scored twice. Well, he scored once really. He can't play in that first one. I'm sorry. And
That's harsh.
Yeah, well, no, he wasn't going in, was it?
It's target, wasn't it?
No, you see, it was a clear header.
It's
a clear header. It's a clear header.
I'd be claiming it if I
absolutely.
I would be, yeah. I would claim it if it was James Vaughan as well. But yeah, Milner. I mean, I actually genuinely don't think he'll play as much a part as he has done over the last couple of years. I think he's played at least 45 games over the last couple of seasons under Klopp. And you're right, last season it wasn't just Milner, it was Wijnaldum at the start of the season as well in midfield. That they weren't involved in the World Cup, and they had that long break, and perhaps towards the end of the season Wijnaldum was suffering a little bit from fatigue because he played in so many big games. But Milner's Klopp's go-to player. Certainly, look at Europe. You felt a bit cruel in him in the Champions League final because you always knew he was never going to start the game. But if you look back, I think there was only one other game in the entire competition that he didn't start, one or two at the most. And even then, of course, he comes on towards the end, does the old thing with the corner kick where he just kept on refusing to take it, then puts it in and Origi scores, and look, everybody's happy. It was made up for him that he won it because he kind of gets the reward that he wanted. And let's not forget, for him to be at that age and that Barcelona game, and at the end where he's in tears because he can't quite comprehend what's just happened, he was part of that. And he came on and played left back, didn't he? Because Roberts at half time. Yeah, so he's a man for all seasons, a man for all positions. And while I think midfield, with Oxlade-Chamberlain now being fit, will be a lot harder to get into, especially if Klopp is going to experiment with Lallana in certain different positions. Because if he did put him in that number 6 role, I think have we mentioned it so far? Yeah.
No.
I'm going to right.
Yeah.
Obviously, he played in that number 6 role against Bradford and against Tranmere. Kind of fits in with what Lallana claimed at the start of the summer, where he said, "Yeah, I've been told I've got a big part of the plans." I mean, whether or not it's just a big part of these 2 games, you know what I mean? So, but we'll get onto that. But yeah, Milner, I think he's still got a role to play. Yeah, he's got the experience. He only now getting the credit he deserves, but I don't think he'll play quite as much as the recent season. Although, of course, Liverpool are playing like 1 million games at the start, so he'll be needed.
Does have that in his favour. Moving on then, a young man who has been very much taking his chance in pre-season, Rhian Brewster. Of course, he'll be off to America this week. If he's not already, at what point does he genuinely become part of the first team conversation? He's doing everything he can, isn't he?
I think he already is, to be honest. What struck me actually is he seems to have had a bit of a growth spurt. He obviously hasn't really played much for over a year with that serious knee and ankle injuries, and seeing him over pre-season, he does seem to have bulked up a little bit and got a little bit taller and just looks a little bit more of a man now. And he's razor sharp, isn't he, in the penalty area? He's a great finisher. Often with young players, they take a few years before you really find out what positions that they're going to excel in, and that's going to be their position. But you can tell straight away watching him that he's just an out-and-out forward, isn't he? A striker, straight down the middle. And Klopp knows that. He even said himself after the Tranmere game that he might have to develop, possibly playing wide in certain games and developing the skill set in those positions. But I've been thoroughly impressed with him so far, and I think he's one of the reasons to be excited for next season. In the League Cup and stuff, when he gets a start. He's just going to carry on doing what he's doing, and I'm excited to see how he develops, to be honest.
I quite like the goals that he scored as well. I like the fact that they weren't like 20 yarders into the top corner. I mean, all three of them were just from about 6 yards, weren't they?
Instinctive.
I mean, the first one was a good header from the cross from Wilson against Tranmere. The second one was the keeper saved it and he parried. And the one against Bradford was a little bit the same, although at the time we didn't have any replays in the stadium and we just assumed it had gone wide. It's like there was no chance he was scoring from that angle. And obviously since then we've seen the keeper ends up putting it in. But it's the fact that he was fastest enough to get to it, to get there first and to get it on target, to make the goalkeeper make... Is it an error or is it... It's one of those, isn't it?
He's just fired it on him, hasn't he?
Exactly, yeah. So he's made the keeper have to do something, and that's all you have to do, yeah. And he does have... I think he was a little bit quieter against Bradford because he was up against slightly more, I'd say more defenders. They defended quite deep and quite a lot of them, certainly in that first half when he was playing. I think you're right. I think he already is in the first team equation. I think he's got to be in that consideration. I wouldn't be surprised if he started the Community Shield, to be honest, him and Origi, because most of the others won't. If they're not back, they'll have done hardly any training. And what's the point in rushing them into that when you've got two strikers who, on the basis of what we've seen so far, are both in form, confident, fit, and they've both got a point to prove?
Yeah, I kind of like him at Brewster's development or lack of development really because of his injury. Obviously him and Phil Foden were the stars for England, weren't they, in the under 17 World Cup in October 2017. The injury that Brewster's had has basically taken him off the shelf, or put him on the shelf rather than in his absence. Phil Foden has just risen up the ranks at City, hasn't he? He's playing Premier League games and he's scoring goals in the Champions League and is now a part of the City team under Pep Guardiola, which Brewster would have been had he have not got injured. So I think it's a big season for him. It's his first senior season, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on, to be honest, because I think Liverpool have got a lot of talented youngsters on the books, but I think he's probably the big one at the moment.
I mean, there's Jadon Sancho as well, isn't there, at Borussia Dortmund, who played alongside them, and that's another example of somebody who did well for England at under 17 World Cup and has then kicked on. I mean, you across the park at Everton, you had Ross Barkley. He lost a few years when he was coming through, and it took him a while to make it. Now he's obviously playing for Chelsea and winning European trophies and whatnot. So it's there for him. Just because he's had a serious injury very early in his career doesn't necessarily mean that he's been compromised, because if anything, it's given him a chance to sit on the sidelines, experience what it's like to be sat on the sidelines, and also to actually watch the players. I mean, I did an interview with him earlier this year where he's talking about he sits there watching games and he watches Firmino and he says like what he does is incredible, and I'm picking up so many tips from just watching him, which I thought was an interesting comment. That was like an early marker of I want to play up front. I know what it takes to play in this Klopp team, and I want to be able to do it. And he does do a little bit of that. He does a little bit of dropping deep, but as Ghosty says, he's a proper striker, isn't he? He knows where the goal is, and he wants those goals. And as a striker, that's what you want more than anything.
Definitely, very exciting to see how he develops this summer and beyond. You wrote about this guy yesterday, Doyley, Dejan Lovren, and how he possibly stands at a career, maybe a transfer crossroads of Liverpool in the face of, in particular, rumoured AC Milan interest. Feels like a situation that could ebb and flow as we get towards the end of the transfer window. But how do you see it panning out with Lovren?
Well, at the moment, if you ask Jurgen Klopp, he's quite happy to keep him. Why wouldn't you? He's a World Cup finalist, Champions League finalist. Liverpool's best player in the Champions League final last year, by the way. Some people forget that. Okay, he's conceded 3 goals, but let's be brutally honest here. 2 of them were keeper dropped it in, and the third one was an overhead kick. So there's nothing he could do about that.
One of the greatest final goals of all time.
Yeah. So there's nothing he could do about that. He had a difficult season last year, didn't he, with the injuries, and he was kind of paying for putting himself through what he did to make sure that he played in the World Cup and gets to the final and play in the Champions League final, which I think people sometimes forget that there are players who, they sacrifice the long term to help everybody in the short term, as it were.
It's understandable as well.
Why would you not want to play?
Particularly knowing the player as well, being such a passionate heart on your sleeve type of player.
Yeah, so why would you not want to do that? But in the end, he's dropped down the ranks. I think everybody knew that Joe Gomez was somebody who could come through and challenge for the position next to Virgil van Dijk. What I don't think anyone was expecting was Joel Matip being quite as good as he was during the second half of the season. And I've said it before, I actually reckon that he was Liverpool's best defender during the last 6 or 7 weeks. Again, it's ridiculous to say this, but when they lost 3-0 to Barcelona, which you had a messy, freak of nature goal, I thought Matip was excellent. I thought he was really good. I don't think you could blame him for anything that went on. And he's now above Lovren. So Lovren's 4th choice. There's interest from abroad. AC Milan, I would imagine there might be some other teams. He's 31 now. I think that's right in saying. So it may ultimately be down to him to go, well, I've been here for 5 years, I've won this, that and the other. He has actually obviously won the Champions League. Does he really have the appetite or hunger to, at that age, challenge for a starting role? I mean, the fact is, because Liverpool are in so many competitions, he'll play certainly games at the start of the season. But when we go deeper into the season, if he's spent like 7, 8, 9, 10 games on the sidelines, because they're not going to pick 2 substitute centre-backs, are they? I mean, obviously injuries could happen along the way, but if it is a 1, 2, 3, 4, he's absolutely fourth at the moment. And only by injuries to other people, I reckon, he's going to go further than that.
What do you think, Gorst? I mean, will he accept being fourth choice at this stage of his career?
It's difficult to say, isn't it? Because we know in Italy they've got a history of not being too concerned about a player's age. So I think he's just turned 30. Actually, I think it was in May, was it?
30 or 30? I can never remember.
30,
yeah, sorry.
For Lallana, who's 31.
That's the one.
So I don't think Lallana be put off by his age, but I think Liverpool. I think this should be one of those occasions where Jurgen Klopp doesn't put the players' interests and needs first, and he says, "You're staying put because we could get maybe 25 million euros for you, but replacing a defender of Lovren's quality is probably going to cost Liverpool considerably more than that in the market where they're not particularly looking to spend." So I think this might be one where Klopp says, keep tight. You're going to get opportunities if Liverpool progress in the cup competition. Okay, they didn't do it last year. They were out in the third round of the League Cup and the FA Cup, weren't they, last season? But if they do go on a bit of a cup run, then opportunities will be there for Lovren, who you'd imagine would be nailed on to start every domestic cup game as far as they go. So if I was Jurgen Klopp, I'd be telling him to stay put. He's not packing his bags, and he's settling in for another season where he will get a few games.
Lovren would just like to apologise. He was 30 less than a fortnight ago. So I know he's listening to
only
this
just
regularly.
30.
I know he
Yeah,
listens to
of
this
course he does.
regularly, so I'd like to sorry for aging you prematurely. The other thing about Lovren is that he picks up a lot of injuries, though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That's even if you take away the one that he got over the summer or the one he was carrying into the new season, he still had that hamstring, which seemed to take forever.
3 months he was out for,
He got a concussion, which wasn't his fault, but then that set him back. So he is injury prone, and it's whether Liverpool decide, look, we could promote. They've just signed Sepp van den Berg. Obviously, we haven't seen him play yet because we're waiting on international clearance. Hoover could play centre back, even though he's been playing right back in the game so far this summer. So it's whether Klopp goes, I'm quite happy to give that give them a chance and accept the money. But at the moment, there's no suggestion that they want to do that. I think they want to keep Lovren.
Ghosty, Klopp was asked about the left-back situation last night after the game and refused to rule out a move for some kind of cover for Andy Robertson. He said, we will see. No, it's not a yes, not a no. So
He actually said a few more yeses and nos, but that got cut down.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's the abridged version. Oh, there you go, clear as mud. But Klopp, I think he's had a point. He's obviously discussed the left-back situation previously in this window, and it's a fair point that Milner, Gomez, I suppose, others can cover. But given the niche and such significant job that Robertson and Trent do you think kind of more specific reinforcements needed there?
It's a difficult one because Liverpool feel that they're not going to be able to find anyone who is going to be willing to sit on their hands on the bench for most of the season, but are still better than Joe Gomez and James Milner as a left-back. So it's a difficult balancing act. There was interest in Lloyd Kelly, was it, earlier in the summer, but once Bournemouth came in with that offer, he was always going there. And he, to be fair to Kelly, he'll play more at Bournemouth, won't he, than he would at Liverpool. So it's an interesting one for Liverpool. If they, if someone who they might be looking at reaches out and says, yes, I'm happy to play in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, and I'm happy to do that only, then maybe they'll take another look at it. But as it stands, Liverpool know that they're in a tough place to find someone who can play better than Milner, who played an entire season there, didn't he, when Liverpool finished fourth only 2 years ago. And Joe Gomez is no stranger to playing full-back either, so it might look as though Liverpool have got a dearth of options, but I wouldn't be too concerned with seeing Joe Gomez line up at left full-back. He obviously wouldn't provide the same attacking impetus that Andy Robertson does, but who does, let's be honest. That if Gomez or Milner were lining up at left-back, it wouldn't be for 5 or 6 games on the bounce. It would just be for the one-off game where Robertson is maybe given a bit of a rest or has picked up a a short injury.
What happens if Robertson gets bit by more spiders and insects, though? That might rule him out for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, then Liverpool really would have to pull the checkbook out, wouldn't they, for someone?
I guess the other option, Doyle, I think, well, of course he's right there. It's going to be the senior names, isn't it? Certainly initially, but Larouci, Lewis, both been given a chance to impress in pre-season.
They barely played it on the 23 level. That's the thing. I mean, Lewis stepped up last season, but he spent a little bit of the time playing in an advanced midfield role, which I know they were because they liked the way he plays going forwards, and that's the same thing with Larouci. He's a left winger. He signed as a left winger, and he got converted to a left back by Barry Lutis at the under-18s boss at the start of last season. I've seen Larouci play quite a few times. I like him, but it is one of those whereby against Tranmere he was able just to bomb forward and he was just loving it. He got into the box I think 2 or 3 times, had shots. The keeper made a save, and fans love stuff like that. But then against Bradford defended deep, which meant he couldn't have much to run at, which meant to be a bit more clever about his forward play. And the second thing is they then broke, and there was 1 or 2 times where he got caught out a little bit, and he gave away a couple of free kicks, which one of them, absolutely, if it was an actual game, a competitive game, he would have definitely been booked. And that was like in the first half. So, okay, you can't really compare a friendly to a competitive match, but they'll have seen little signs like that as if to say, like, yeah, you're a work in progress. I don't think he's anywhere near the first team at the moment. He's somebody who perhaps could get the bench tools, if they make it further down the line in the League Cup. But I think for him, personally, he'd be looking to make himself, basically make an impact at the under-23 level, sorry. Mm-hmm. That's what the next season, anyway.
Yeah. Staying with you on this one, Doyle, there's a bit of a mild goalkeeper crisis at Liverpool presently. How have the Reds reacted to it? An interesting solution?
They've sold everybody. No, what's happened is... how do we say? Is it Kevin Kelleher? Keevan, that's it. Yeah,
it's basically the male version of our very own Kiva, Kiva O'Neill.
Kiva O'Neill, Kevin Kelleher, the Irish guy. Yeah, the blonde Irish guy. He fractured his wrist, didn't he? Yeah, he fractured his wrist while on holiday, so he's currently recovering from that. Kamil Grabara played for the under-21s, Poland under-21s, the under-21 European Championships in the summer. He's not back yet. And in any case, Klopp mentioned the other day that he's still suffering from a little bit of pain, whether he's picked up a knock while he's been out there. Vitislav Jaros now, he's got is it an elbow strain or something?
I'm not too sure about it.
I think it's an elbow ligament strain, certainly a ligament strain somewhere, and he's out for a few weeks. Now, obviously, Alisson Becker is still having a rest after having won the Copa America with Brazil. So they're left with Mignolet and Dan Atherton, who's only 19, and he's barely played for the under-18s because that's the level he's at the moment, because he was behind Jaros, so whenever Jaros wasn't available, Atherton would play. And he came on against Tranmere and played up front, and then he came on putting a good tackle though. And he came on for 15 minutes towards the end of the game against Bradford on Sunday. But other than that, that's it. Now, if they haven't got any goalkeepers or even junior goalkeepers they can call upon, there aren't enough of them to actually take part in training. So what Liverpool have done is they've gone to Andy Lonergan. In fact, what's his first name? It is Andy.
Andy,
I was right. Sorry, I was just
Adam Lewis, Andy Lonergan.
Basically, it's all the A's, isn't it? Andy Lonergan, who has recently been let go by Middlesbrough. He's 35. The listeners may recognise the name because he's been knocking around the Championship for years.
Championship veteran, isn't he? I remember
he's never played any higher than the Championship. So he's played for Preston, he's played for this, that, and Rochdale. He was on loan, an emergency loan there last season. So he's not actually signed for Liverpool as such. There's no contract in the offing. But he's there to basically do them a favour, make up the numbers, join in the training so they've got sufficient numbers for that. He may even go to, when they go on the training camp over in France when they come back from America and play the game up in Scotland. I don't think there's any suggestion he's going to actually play any of the games, although I don't know that for sure. It'd be interesting to see what happens there, because I would be slightly surprised because he'd have to be registered, surely.
I'd like
he'd
to
have
see
to
it.
be registered, surely, even for a friendly, because these are going to be a big deal. But the other side to that is Mignolet's going to be basically playing nearly all of the games now. And Klopp was asked about him after the game against Bradford. Obviously, we kind of all suspected he might look to leave Mignolet because he played two games last season. And he's, everybody knows that Klopp regards him as a great professional, and he sets a great example. And you've seen his social media game is strong. He's always supporting the team, and he was evidently, genuinely made up when they won the Champions League, even though he'd played technically on the pitch no part, but behind the scenes he'd have played a massive part in helping Alisson. And he did the interview, didn't he, with James
January.
Rest him, even though he's not actually. Yeah, he's left. He did an interview in January where he basically said he finds it far easier to be behind Alisson, who he regards as one of the greatest goalkeepers in the world, and he didn't mention any names, but we kind of knew.
A lot of
we kind of knew what he was getting at. But the point is, Mignolet's a footballer, wants to play. We thought he might go. He still might go, but at the moment, Klopp, very much insistent that he's going to be staying. So that's a little bit like the Lovren situation, I think. If more weighted towards, you could understand it if Mignolet wanted to go, and if he does go, that's a massive if. To be fair, then Klopp's got the decision: do I put my trust in any of the several youngsters that I've just mentioned, then, or do you go out and buy stopgap goalkeeper or somebody? Or what he actually said was another number one who's happy to be number two. There's not many keepers who are like that.
No.
I think in the case of Mignolet, Liverpool have probably got one of the best backup goalkeepers around, haven't he? He'd walk into most teams in the Premier League. 200 appearances at Liverpool, as Dory mentions, great professional, uber professional, just always there with the social media posts and just these little touches, I think. So yeah, I think Liverpool do well to keep hold of him. And there was a suggestion that the only way he'd leave is if an incredible offer arrived for Mignolet, and at the moment doesn't seem as though anything like that's on the table. So looks like he's going to stay. And I think it all depends on the cup competitions, doesn't it? All these players we're talking about are going to get opportunities if they perform when they're called upon in the early rounds of the cup. So it's down to them how many games they're going to play, essentially. And Mignolet's in that bracket alongside Lovren and one or two others.
Absolutely. Right then, well, the Reds are off on tour this week, off to America. Doyle, are you going with them? Are you confident you can break America?
I've already long broken America. I was in America in January in Daytona Beach, just in case anybody didn't know that. So I broke America then. I'm like the Beatles.
Yeah.
Less like Oasis because they did not break America.
Been there, done that.
Very, very, very contemporary references, topical references there from the 1960s and the 1990s. Yeah, well done to me.
Well, yeah, Doyle will be flying out for the Echo on Wednesday, and we'll have plenty from stateside, regular dispatches, pods, pieces, everything, you name it. So we'll all be there on the Echo website when the fun begins in America at the end of the week. So we will be back ahead of the first game. Bye for now.